understand you use harmonics of atomic frequencies.
Sympathetic frequencies.
Harmonic reinforcement?
Go on.
You've tried to, I think, evolve the sounds, because I think anyone that makes a movie, you look back at your movie, and it's like, there's maybe a couple of things you want to do a little different.
Basically, everything on the picture that moves, I try to provide a sound for it.
When you're doing a movie that's a comic book type movie, there are no rules. You can do anything, and anything can make any sound.
There's less time, almost always, on a sequel than the original. At least the 3 I've done have all been tighter schedules. So the pressure is actually higher, and there's usually more music.
We listened to what they had in the first movie, and I asked the director and the picture editor what they like and what they felt can be improved upon, and then we make some decisions on what we should attempt to make better.
He is relatively new to supervising, although he's been sound designing for films for a long time, and he stepped up to the plate and did an incredible job creating some magnificent sounds for this movie.
I think my approach of sounds in general, I like very organic, real sounds, not synthetic sounds, and that's one of the design aspects of, I think, the whole movie that we spoke about very early on. And like for Doc Ock, for instance, in this movie, he has his tentacles. So we had some discussions if they were going to sound like they had like servos in them or not, and then we decided that it shouldn't have, because it made it. If you had servos in the tentacles, it sounded more like they were a different part of him. And if we went without the servers, we felt they sounded more like they were connected with Doc Ock himself. It was a part of him.
Yes.
I will start with a scene that had most of the movements going to be in the movie, and I just laid out rough templates. For the metallic spine, I got like the biggest motorcycle chain I can find, and so a lot of the movements is from that. And then some old piano wires, which are very strong wires. You can do a lot to them without breaking them. And use that for a lot of the fluidness of the arm, instead of not having, like in lieu of having a servo motor. So he's mostly made up by motorcycle chains and piano wires.
And now on to the main event. Give me the blue light.
There's a fusion machine in the movie here. That's a big part of the plot. So I started out with an opera singer for this fusion ball. It's basically only her voice and my own voice. I need to start with very pure sounds to be able to make harmonics like you would build like an orchestration. On a movie like this, you would love to be able to record every single thing, but you have a car passing by you 200 feet away. It's, I use something I record from another movie or from a canned library, but for these specific things, I really try to make it all from scratch,
Okay, let's do a playback, Brian. It's kind of like painting a picture, and whatever's moving on the screen, I'll record each sound individually, and we record those track by track, and then when you play it back, it's in sync with the picture. And when you're done, it's a wall of unique sound that's contributed to the film. It's all created on the Foley stage, basically with hand props and with nothing. There's no pre-recorded sound effects. These two ingredients, actually, believe it or not, were part of what we used on Spider-Man 2 for the web attach sounds. This is a little bit of leather pieces that I cut here. They're thin little strands. They give a whipping sound, and then when the web attaches, this is actually 1/4-inch audio tape. This gives just a little bit of a web sound, stretchy sound. Whenever the web hits on a surface, then we kind of hit it like this. They're recording sound when it's on the film, on location. They're concentrating on the actor's dialogue, which is the most important. And a lot of those sounds go away because the boom mic only picks up certain sounds. And so we go back to enhance the film, make it more dynamic, more interesting. Hollywood tends to pump up sound, so they want it just to be more intense for the theaters. Okay, actually, I know it looks like I'm putting together a lot of junk here, but each one of these things gives a different sound to it. Okay, kind of what we use for the claw, this is basically, it's got a little bit of movement with it. It looks like a shotgun, but anyway, this is a frequency here. It's a move, I call it like a movement thing. And then this machete actually gives the ring of the claw because it's metallic, so you want a nice ring. So this car door is giving me the weight. This fence here, this steel fence is giving me the steel sound. And then this echo, this metal box here actually just gives it just a teeny bit of echo. And then the mixer is using his audio outboard gear in there and making all of these items, bringing them lower in octave, making them beefy and thick. Now we got to come up with the sound of the screech of when the door pulls out. So, this is actually a hubcap on this car door, and it makes an irritating screech sound. Give me one more, Brian. One more. When you put these sounds with the sound effects, then you have your whole sound presentation for the film.
Well, I know that they had early meetings. Danny and Paul got together as far as understanding the palette of sounds that were being designed and creating those sounds and where effects were going to live and where music was going to live. One of the things Kevin and I work so hard to try to do is to pick and choose and create so that there is not a train wreck, if you want to call it that, between music and effects through the course of a film.
My approach when I design it or we cut the sounds for the scene, we will back it off and make it less intrusive for the sake of the music. Or maybe Danny saying, I like to do something big with higher strings here. Then in the frequency register, I try to stay out of those type of sounds. So I will just try to complement what he's doing for those scenes.
The hardest part of the process is coming up with the tone of the film the first time and the main themes, and that part just drives me nuts. So I don't have to go through the same kind of torturous thing, but instead I'm going to be able to do variations, and variations are always kind of fun. Now where do I take something and turn it into something fresh or something I haven't done or something that I wanted to do on the first one but never got an opportunity to do. In the beginning, it's always like dipping into a well, and you have no idea how far down you have to go. So it's kind of like, I'm lowering that bucket again, and as many times as you do it, you just never know. Am I going to hit water right away? Or am I going to be like looking for more rope and more rope and more rope and still going There's nothing down there. So that's the hardest part. It's that mystery each time. I've once described it because I was watching a painter friend of mine prepare to get into a body of work, and he spent a long time getting all of his colors and pigments all lined up and all organized all together. And before he started a single painting, and while I watched him work, I realized that's exactly what I do in the beginning. And then when that's all completely laid out, it's all organized, I create a thing called a template. And I got all these sounds. Oh, that sounds. Oh, I think I'm gonna be able to use that. I need something metal, and I'll go through and I'll listen. Yeah, that's gonna work. So I'll just lay it all out, and then I'll finally start writing the first cue. I look for the biggest scenes to score first, but not action scenes. Action scenes are very time-consuming, but they're not the ones that the rest of the score is going to revolve around. I'm going to look for the big, dynamic scenes, the big emotional scenes. I'll usually pick something in the middle of the movie that's a turning point. There's usually some big scene where there's a major conflict develops. Because I know that if I can capture the most difficult cue in the movie, then I could back up from there and go, that worked out really well. Now I could go back to the top of the film and start working, not necessarily in order, but as much as I can. But I know where it's going because I've already developed what I'm now going to start playing with in the beginning into its full-blown version, and I already am confident that it's going to work well. We'll score like Spider-Man 2. There's 60 starts, 85 minutes, 60 different pieces of music. I'm going like a freight train, but I really depend on some help to keep myself organized on the backside. Otherwise, I'll forget whole cues. It all starts to seem like a kind of a nightmarish puzzle. Like all these pieces are flying all over. And then with luck, knock wood, there's a point where they just seem to come together. And that's the best moment. I don't think there's any rules for any kind of movies. I mean, that's what I learned from my master, who was Bernard Herrmann. Growing up on his music, I learned very early on that there were no rules, period. It's just whatever rules you make up. If it works, it works.
When you speak with the composer early on and the director, what the approach is, I think it makes it easier to make a great mix at the end of it, which is all our goals, to make this as a very good sounding movie.
Having been through the first one with Sam, we really had an understanding as to how he likes to mix and how selective he likes to be about what he hears and when. In true comic book fashion, there's a lot of wham, bam, pow type of sequences through this film. And wherever we can get quiet, it's very effective for the movie as an overall run.
I mean, if you look at the movie, there's so many things visually happening at one time. You can't hear everything at one time, so we need to focus on what we do want to hear. And that's what I think was one of our biggest challenges on this one, was to try to be more focused on what we do want to hear versus what we don't want to hear.
Wait a second.
Doc Ock's a pretty noisy guy, and everywhere he goes, he makes a statement.
He makes quite a bit.
He makes
of
a
noise.
lot of racket. You know when he's coming.
Peter Parker. And the girlfriend.
A huge challenge on this movie was trying to decide what's carrying the emotion of the scene better, the sound effects or the music. And it's pretty much a 50-50 trade-off in this movie, which is I would say leaning more towards the effects and than most movies we work on. A lot of movies drive the action sequences with music. This is pretty much driven, I'd say 50-50 with sound effects.
In terms of this work and this job is that we still have a lot of fun doing it, and Sam's a lot of fun to work with. The whole crew has been it's been enjoyable. There's the stress of getting it done obviously has been what it is, but we've had a good time doing it, so that's a big plus.
Just make sure when you watch this DVD that you click on the 5.1 presentation so that you get the full sense around sound.
Exactly.
You'll dig it.